Hi.
Hey,
Where did it go?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because you're in charge. I'm just here to help.
Yep. I was going to see if I could. I don't think I'll be sharing anything, but I was going to test it out.
We'll keep the chat open, and if there's so you don't have to look at too many things at once. And if there's anything that people don't chime in and just talk with a question, we can make sure you know about it. Unless you want
Sure.
to watch the chat too.
I think I can see it, so I usually just keep it open.
Okay.
And I don't mind just responding. I'm hoping we can just have a conversation about what people are up to and any spur of the moment case presentations.
Great.
Just kind of let that happen.
Okay.
Yeah. How are you?
Good. I'm good. We've got Jody with us already, just so you know.
Cool.
We're staying busy. Lots to do.
Isn't there? There's never a shortage of things to do in this world.
Well, it looks like let's see, on the agenda that Lucia provided, she said something about Benjamin Willie.
Yeah, he emailed earlier this week that he wouldn't be able to participate.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I'm hoping for just conversations around how it's going with people, and anything, maybe just some common issues we might be facing and ways we can tackle that together.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. And then I was going to see, I have a little bit, I don't think she's shown it yet, but I have a video we could watch, about 18 minutes.
Okay, let's test it.
If we're, let me just pull it up. I have that. That's there. Okay. Oh, you'll hear the commercial play, and then I'm gonna
Share your screen.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Let's see if I can share that. How does that look?
I can see it. Let's see if
Okay.
we can hear it. Are you hearing something?
Yeah.
I'm not. Let me see. I've got the sound all the way up.
Let me do this. Hold on. I think it's because I had my earphones in. Do that.
What does it actually mean?
Oh, I can hear it now.
Or indeed to help an entire community?
Okay.
Yes, it's working well.
Okay, so that was I'll stop sharing, but we have that if everybody's really quiet.
All right.
I'll keep that loaded in the background. Awesome. I wasn't sure if that would work or not, so that's great. I wanted to just
I'm
go.
excited it worked because we haven't had a good track record the last couple weeks with videos.
Yeah, yeah. I've been, for whatever reason, in the last 2 weeks on so many Zoom calls that I needed to share my screen. So I feel like I just had like a crash course in sharing through Zoom. So I told
Good.
Lucia, I'm like, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Oh, and I see Jonda joined.
Hi,
Hi,
can you hear
Jonda.
me?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm eating my lunch. That's why I didn't do video.
Oh,
But I'm here.
nice.
Good
Glad
to see you, Chris.
Yeah, you too. I work from home these days, so I never really think about what I look like. And so at about 11:45, I was like, oh, I should go look in the mirror and see if my hair is crazy or all that.
You're always beautiful. Don't worry about that.
Ah, thanks. Very kind. We have a couple minutes before we start.
Mm-hmm.
Any new exciting events coming up at Wayside, Rebecca?
Oh, we've got an open house. We're starting a new program, an outpatient program specifically for nurses. Yeah, so there's on the 29th, we're having like a little open house breakfast to
Mhm.
talk about this new program, and I think it should be pretty cool. Yeah, so that's the biggest development recently.
Great. Did you connect with the nurses support group,
I
Kayla?
think that they did. I'm not part of the implementation of it. I'm going to get a tutorial this afternoon so that when we're out and about, I know how to answer those questions.
Yeah.
But I think I heard that they're also working with the board so
Uh-huh.
that if people are wanting to do some, keep their license but go through treatment and, it's conditional,
Mm-hmm.
that this might be an option for them.
Well, it was interesting. I was doing a lot of research earlier this or late last year around the physicians program.
Yeah.
Oh, and they have like I wanted to say like an 80% success rate
Oh.
of physicians who go through these certain programs. And so when we're looking at outcomes generally in our current treatment modalities and people say, well, there isn't a model that shows X number of success, it was actually William White reflecting on, well, we actually do have a model. We just use it for physicians. But they kept the programming ran about, I want to say it was over 2 years. So it's not like they were in clinical treatment, but they had that really expanded continuum of care, and they were showing these super high rates of success. And so he was contending, well, we do have models that work and show really high outcomes. We just aren't willing to yet invest those resources into the kind of general treatment population.
Right.
And I thought that was super interesting, and how we need to hear that more.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and see those reports and understand. And it was really simple what they did.
Do you have a reference for that report?
Yeah, I'll dig it up.
Will you send it to me?
Yeah.
I'd love to share that with our outpatient director, because she may want to see what they're doing if she doesn't already know. But that'd be great. I could love to share it. We're starting with nurses, and we'll see how that goes, and then move on to other probably professional groups.
Yeah, they do it for I think it was physicians and then pilots as well.
Really?
Pilots have a really intensive program they need to go through if something comes up. and obviously because of the responsibility they carry in their work. And so they apply this model to kind of these high stakes, I guess, professions, and they just have tremendous outcomes. And it's something for, I think, the general treatment population or, you know, providers to look at and say, how can we move towards this? We may not be able to go full scale, but how can we move towards that?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll send you
Thank you.
what I have. I go down rabbit holes with that stuff. I just read about it and then I keep digging and digging and see.
Well, then you're a good friend to have.
Yeah.
Well, I've got us right at noon.
Great.
Do you want to lead our introductions? You'll just take over, won't you?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
absolutely. Sure. So it sounds like I just see a handful of folks, so we'll let others join. So we have, I think, 7 or 8 participants total.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do is just do a roll call. So I'll say the name that I see on your screen, which may or may not be your name, so that you can pop on. You'll have to unmute yourself. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see pop-up come up where it says mute and stop video. So you can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, where you're from, and then remute yourself when you're done. So we'll start with, I'm just going to go left to right. So I'll start with you, Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm an AmeriCorps member serving at Minnesota Recovery Connection right now as a project coordinator, and I've been kind of helping out the Peer Support Alliance this year.
Awesome. Thank you. And then next I see Jody 3 is the screen name. Oh, I can't hear you. You gotta unmute. There we go.
I'm Donald Stanton. I'm from Winter Garden, Florida, and I'm a retired pastor and addiction counselor for the last 20 years.
Awesome. How did you hear about us?
I found you on the web pages I was going through.
Nice. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jonda.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jonda. I'm a recovery navigator at Minnesota Recovery Connection for AmeriCorps.
Cool. Welcome. We have Sharif.
I'm Sherry. I'm with Wayside.
Oh, okay. Cool. So that was the one that's SHAREEF.
Yep, Sherry.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I'm seeing the right person.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah. Ashley, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself, who you are and where you're from?
I am Ashley. I work for the Mobile Suds here at Minnesota Recovery Connections as a peer recovery specialist.
Awesome. Welcome. I love that program. Mary. Mary Billsdoe, do you want to?
Maybe Mary doesn't have a microphone.
Let's see. You can type in a hello, Mary. Typically, she does come on video, so we'll see if she pops up here.
That's weird.
Or you can always chat too, Mary, if you're not able to get your microphone unmuted. Go ahead and type in a hello in the chat. I know that Mary is a fierce recovery advocate and trained peer recovery specialist in our state, and I'm happy she's around giving a voice to recovery in Minnesota. And then I have a phone number, so it's 1-857-272-2605.
Hello?
Hi, this is Stacy Walsh. I'm from the Disaster Distress Helpline, and I'm a program manager for a peer support online program.
Sure. Where are you from?
The Disaster Distress Helpline. It's under Vibrant Emotional Health in New York City.
Oh, in New York City. Cool. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I think, did I get everybody, Rebecca?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to the Peer Support Echo. Really the objective around the Echo is a way to bring peers across, initially it was across the state, and now we're looking at the region and beyond across the US, so giving us a place to come together. Lucia, who's not here today, and I had decided to run a format where on the, we go every other session. One session we'll do a case study and really have people talk about a real life circumstance that they're working on, and let other peers join in and talk about how they might meet those challenges or try to help them troubleshoot or problem solve. And then the following Peer Support Echo, we're going to have a subject matter expert come on and talk about a topic that peers might use in their work and kind of go take a little bit deeper dive on it. So this week we're scheduled to do a case study, and unfortunately the person we had scheduled to bring the case study isn't able to join us. So we have a couple different options. We do have some new voices in the group, so I would be open to someone volunteering to talk about maybe a case they're working on, or someone they're working with, or maybe a circumstance that comes up frequently that you might have trouble navigating or want some support around, or hear ideas from other peers that are on the call today about how they navigate similar situations. And then if we're not getting any volunteers, I do have, it's a little bit longer, so about an 18-minute video we could watch about, it's really interesting, a way to develop sustainable communities, and I see how it relates to peer support. So the essence of the TED Talk really gets down to what we do as peers and how we empower people to live their best lives possible. So depending on all of you, and if we get any volunteers, we can either watch the video or we could talk about some developing some skills in troubleshooting. So does anyone in the group have a circumstance or a skill that they're kind of grappling with that they'd like to talk about on today's call?
I kind of do. This is Ashley here. So can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm working with a client currently, and I kind of spaced out a little bit what you said because I was on the phone with a client, so I'm sorry. But
that's okay.
I have a client that's currently hospitalized for MRSA infection in his blood from IV drug use. And he has been able to kind of confide in me and talk to me very honestly about where he wants to go in life. And he states that he wants to use, that's just what he wants to do. He just wants to use clean needles and those types of things. And he is under commitment. So the whole confidentiality situation, if he does use intravenously, like if he does IV use, I have to report it to his social worker because he could die because of the infection. So that's just kind of hard for me a little bit, that situation.
Yeah. Does anybody on the call have feedback for Ashley? So she's in a situation where because of the role she plays as a peer, and so again, organizationally, sometimes we'll have rules or policies we have to follow that maybe butt up against or may seem contrary to the integrity of peer support. So in other words, what we're taught in a class is to really honor that confidentiality and what a peer, a recovery or someone we're working with says to us stays with us. And then you have this kind of dichotomy where the organization you're working with and the peer situation necessitates you kind of telling on the peer. And so I'm curious to hear from others in the group what you think of that or how you've handled that situation in the past.
Has anyone had a similar situation to that, or your duty to warn or report conflicted with your desire and need to have a trusting, private, confidential relationship? You can just raise your hand too if you don't want to talk.
Yeah. On video.
Ashley, if you don't mind coming back on and tell me a little bit more instinctually, like what's coming up for you in that situation as a peer.
Well, I think that first and foremost, I have to follow the rules and regulations of the company. So I had clinical supervision and spoke with my supervisor regarding this, and he informed me that I do have to report if he talks to me about using intravenously, and I totally understand that. And I do think that him IV drug using is kind of a death sentence because of his current medical situation. So I know that that's the right thing to do. But then there's some little part of me that I see how happy he is just to be able to be upfront and honest with somebody and not have to lie, to feel like he has to lie or BS his way. You know what I mean? I can see that he's happy to be able to talk to somebody about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I need to be transparent with him and explain to him about the duty to warn, report, and let him know that if he does tell me those types of things, what I will have to do. And also maybe finding different resources that aren't within this company, I think, for him. But yeah, it's a tricky situation when you know what the right thing to do is.
Mm-hmm.
But I really get a lot out of him feeling so good about being honest, you know?
Mm-hmm. A question for you from me would be, is there an opportunity to have a conversation almost similar to the one we're having? And so it's part of the beauty of peer support is the reciprocal nature of it. And so we're in a relationship that there's less hierarchy and authority than traditional clinical relationships. And so is there an opportunity there for you to approach it with him very much so like you did with the group and kind of like, hey, you know what, I'm in this a little bit of I'm in a pickle here. So on the one hand, I have this relationship with you and I really value what you share with me and your openness, and I see in you a sense of relief in being able to share openly with somebody. And on the other hand, my because I work for this organization and I am employed and I have to follow these rules and policies, here are the requirements. And what do you think we can do to come to an understanding where you still feel heard and yet I meet the policies and what's required of me for having this job?
Yeah, I think that this person's rapport and our rapport is really good. And I think that we have a super kind of casual conversation about a lot of things. So I
Mhm.
think that we are in a place where I can, explain that to him and he would understand and he would feel very probably grateful that I had that conversation with him because he deserves, to know. Because a lot of the times when I talk to people, that's one of my, my big things is I don't, I'm not reporting to your probation officer or,
Mhm.
like you can talk to me unless it's, something like, child abuse or, those types of things. I'm a mandated reporter. So to just kind of maybe explain to him that his situation is a little bit different because of his medical issues.
Mhm.
I think that I would be able to have that conversation with him. But otherwise, like this whole situation has really opened my eyes to the possibilities of lots of things within recovery, like harm reduction and all of those things that I had never really thought about. So my brain is just going crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it sounds like you even brought up some really good things that I think our system is starting to embrace, but some ideas around, you brought up like the use of clean needles. Like that is huge. That's such a great step in a direction of self-care for this person. And maybe one that they hadn't practiced previously. And so even that is kind of moving that needle, and you hear some change talk in there.
Chris, can I say something?
Yeah,
Can
John,
you
go
hear me?
ahead.
So, this is just a thought, but, I know that recovery coaches, they can stress or say harm reduction, and we don't really have to like tell on their probation officer or whoever. So you could always try to maybe set him up with one of the navigators or a recovery coach, and maybe he could get comfortable with them and maybe talk to them.
Yeah, maybe somebody who a little bit more anonymously, maybe
Sure.
that doesn't know his whole entire situation. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, that's just a thought because for one, I am an ex-IV drug user and, I did have MRSA, so I pretty much know where he's coming from. That's why I'm sober today because I almost died. So, having somebody to talk to was a big thing when I first, was in the hospital and things. And I just, maybe if you did maybe hook him up with one of us recovery coaches or navigators, maybe, he might open it up to us. And, I do think that him using clean needles will save his life more than it would hurt his life, so I just think that maybe he just needs some kind of support system so that he could just confide in somebody. So I would be more than happy, or whoever here or somebody that, would help him out.
Thank you. I think that that's a really good idea. And also, I'm just going to be doing. I heard somewhere that there's like mobile needle exchanges, and just kind of to like dig into that realm, I guess, because I don't really know much about it. So it's just a really good opportunity to learn about these things, because if that's what he's going to do, him having access to clean needles is very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something I always, historically, is, I think as recovery coaches too, there's, we need to continue to advocate as well. Um, and I'm not saying to go run out and do this now, Ashley, because I understand the the situation you're in, but it's also the kind of big picture, the idea as peers. I think organizationally, we need to have these conversations, and leadership needs to include peers in developing and defining policies, because maybe that's a policy that could be changed, or your role in that policy eventually down, not necessarily you, but meaning down the road in the future. Some of those policies need to be a little more nimble so that peers can do the work they do with integrity and fidelity, and really honor the way peer support was developed and what it was meant to do, and still still be embedded within teams and organizations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's, I think because it could be because it's just maybe a touchy subject, or peer support is really in its infancy. It seems like, from my perspective, there's so many, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. There's so many roadblocks in the way of that, because a lot of people don't want to touch that subject,
Right.
you know, because of liability, because of a lot of things. So if I were to transport this person to get clean needles, and then if he were to overdose, for instance, on one of the needles that I took him to get, you know, those types of things is what I think of. But I definitely think with some time and advocating for people, I think that it's the start of something good, at least in my head, because I feel like this like fire in my belly about
Yeah.
the whole thing. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. When there's organizations that have harm reduction peers, that I think it's good for the kind of the two groups of peers. So maybe peers that work in more clinical or substance use disorder treatment settings and that sort of thing, to connect with those harm reduction peers and say, how do you navigate this? And what are the legalities? And get that information so that we can be bringing that information back to our organizations to say, well, I think sometimes there's assumptions made about policies and legalities and who's responsible for what. And there's assumptions made, and sometimes made on misinformation. But thank you. That was a great, I think that's a great topic. And I think we could spend full day training could be developed around how you navigate those waters. Anyone else have any situations come up? Well, we're at 12:22. So like I said, Rebecca, what's your thoughts? I could play that video. Like I said, it's about 18 minutes, so that would take us till 12:40.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. Play the video and see if that gets some more discussion going, because I think that's an important topic.
Yeah, this will take us a little off topic, but hopefully people can see how it all relates back. If not, it's just it's a good video to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and everybody can watch along.
Chat if you can't hear, or if you have any problems, so that we can address them right away.
Thank you. The question, can I help you, is a question that millions of people ask millions of other people every single day. What does it actually mean to help another human being, or indeed to help an entire community? I believe that helping is a powerful and often beautiful human impulse. But I also believe that helping has a shadow side, that certain styles or forms of helping are actually doing more harm than good. Rosabeth Moss Kanter, the Harvard academic, puts it beautifully when she says that when we do change to people, they experience it as violence. But when people do change for themselves, they experience it as liberation. Today, I want to present a very simple idea. And the idea is this: if we want to help people in a way that does no harm to them and their capacities and their communities, then the best place to start is with what is strong within them and within their communities, and not with what's wrong. There is an abundance of evidence that calls us to this way of helping. including the 75-year study on what makes happiness possible, the longitudinal study from Harvard, which reminds us that it's best to lean into our relationships and to create community rather than lean into ourselves and money. And the work of the Kettering Foundation, which studies what happens when democracies work as they should. And indeed, here in the UK, the work of the New Economics Foundation, which has helped us to see the 5 ways to well-being. Still, despite the fact that thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence call us to the idea that we should start with the capacities and the abilities in people and in communities, we see this great preponderance in governmental and non-governmental programs alike around the focus and the obsession with the starting on what is wrong, what is broken, what is pathological within people. Sadly, that focus has caused huge harm to millions of people around the world, especially poor people and especially communities. And it has created 4 harms, unintended as they may be in particular. The first of which is it actually takes people who we're trying to help and it defines them not by their gifts and their capacities and what they can bring to the solution, but by their deficiencies and their problems. The second unintended consequence of this top-down obsession with what's wrong is that money, which is intended to go to those who need the help, doesn't. It actually goes to those who are paid to provide the services to those who need help. The third unintended consequence is that active citizenship, the power to take action and to respond at the grassroots level, retreats in the face of ever-increasing technocracy, professionalism, and expertise. And finally, entire neighborhoods, entire communities that have been defined as deficient start to internalize that map and believe that the only way that anything is going to change for them is when some outside expert with the right program and the right money comes in to rescue them. These are unintended harms. No caring professional wants these things to happen, but it's also clear that no community needs these things to happen. Fortunately, there's another way of thinking about helping. We can begin to actually reflect on a form of helping which starts with a focus on what's strong, not what's wrong, and literally turns our traditional ideas of helping inside out. John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann, 2 professors at Northwestern University in the late 80s, brought this idea into sharp focus when they spent over 4 years traveling almost like an odyssey across 300 neighborhoods in North America, some 20 cities. And as they went into these neighborhoods, which were largely known by others as backwaters of pathology, known by the sum of their problems, John and Jody started a different conversation. They invited people to tell them stories about how change happens from their point of view. They invited people to share stories about a time that they and their neighbors came together to make things better. And the stories they shared, some 3,000 stories in all across that 4 years, they brought a focus, they brought a way of seeing what actually is used by citizens and by people in neighborhoods to create change. They helped us to see the raw ingredients that people use to make change happen from inside out. These are the 6 building blocks that those communities said are the building blocks that make change happen when it's sustainable and it's endurable and it respects the assets that exist already in communities. Over the last 30 years, we've traveled across the world, and from communities in Tallahassee in the USA to Torbay in the UK, we have heard the exact same report from the mouths of indigenous communities. People telling us that these are the assets that must be identified, connected, and mobilized if we're going to see real change happen in our world. Imagine what would happen if our traditional ways of helping people were flipped. If instead of focusing on what was wrong with individuals and indeed with entire communities, we started with a focus on what's strong. And then we figured out how to negotiate a new relationship, a more respectful relationship. I think what would happen is that we would see transformation in a way that we could never have imagined. Fortunately, it's already happening. We're doing some work, and we've had the privilege of coming alongside some community builders in Leeds. Leeds is a city, as you know, in the UK. And over the years, we've trained a number of community builders in the city council, but also in the neighborhood networks. In Leeds, one of the things they care deeply about is how older people can live well and age well close to home, and also how they can ensure that those that are aging do not die with an experience of loneliness and feelings of uselessness. One of the things that they've also come to understand is that there is no program and there is no service for loneliness. The only way that we can address loneliness is by building community, by building deep relationships. And so traditional models which take older people and put them together with other older people in programs for older people will not be sufficient to end loneliness. Today in Leeds, their focus is not on building a bridge between older, vulnerable people and the center of their services, but on building a bridge between older people and the center of community life. Take Robin. Robin was in his mid-70s when he first came in contact with a community builder that we trained in Leeds. He had just lost his wife, and he was experiencing all of the challenges and the traumas that you experience with bereavement. But the community builder that engaged with Robin didn't just listen to those emotions, though she listened. She also asked Robin what his passions were, what he cared about enough to act upon, what made his eyes dance in his head. And what Robin said when she asked those questions was, he was passionate about making walking sticks. That was his great passion, taking branches from fallen trees and carving them into walking sticks. Today, Robin is a leader of a group that he set up, made up of all age groups, who are learning how to make walking sticks and sharing those walking sticks with people in the community. The significance of the story is this: Robin is not a client in a service. Robin is a citizen at the center of his community, using his gifts along with the gifts of his neighbors to make a better community and a more inclusive community. So often when we label people as vulnerable or as deficient or as problematic, what we actually do is we define them out of community and redefine them not as friend and as neighbor, but as client in a service system. And I think that when we do that, we take some of the soul away from the person, all in the name of helping them. Sometimes we don't just do that to individuals. In many communities around the world, we've actually done it to entire villages, in some cases, entire continents. We have to figure out a way of lifting those labels which obscure the gifts of communities, the resources, the capacities, the untapped reservoir of possibility and creativity and invention that exists in every single community, if only we could focus on what was strong within them so that they could use that strength to address what's wrong. Well, one of the places where we're learning a lot about how to make those invisible resources more visible is a place called Wirral, another place in the UK. One of our community builders has been working across the world to find the hidden treasures that exist in that community. And one of the people that we've discovered is Frank. Frank is a community artist who has such a driving passion for changing his community and for seeing the strength in every single individual. He believes that there is nobody whose gifts are not needed to create the kind of world that he believes is possible if we include everybody's gift. Frank is an artist, so he sees things through the eyes of an artist. And one of his passions is making sure that the environment looks as well as it possibly can in the world for those who live there and for those who visit. New Brighton Beach was one of his recent projects, and he was really disturbed by the fact that there was so much litter and detritus on the beach. He decided he wanted to mobilize. So he got his community involved. Now, most people, when they see litter, what they do is one of two things typically. Either they organize a litter pick with volunteers, or else they lobby the council to try and get them to do something about it. Well, Frank had a different idea. Frank's idea was to create a pirate ship. This is the Black Pearl. The Black Pearl today stands as one of the biggest tourist attractions on the world. But it's also a beacon of civic engagement, because Frank didn't just build that boat or that ship himself. He invited people, many people who felt exactly like the driftwood that was coming onto the shore, forgotten and cast aside. He invited them to bring their gifts, to creating this icon of impossibility, this tribute to the possibility that comes when you invite people from the grassroots to identify the solution in their own words and to create the solution with their own hands. You know, everywhere I go, I find that when people create things themselves, they own them in a way that you can never, ever own that which is being created for you. The pirate ship has really affected a huge transformation in that community. Needless to say, New Brighton Beach is cleaner than it's ever been, but also thousands of other below the radar initiatives that we just don't see are happening on the world, because community builders are taking care to identify, connect, and mobilize the assets that exist in every community. I'm so heartened to be able to report to you that all over the world, this backyard revolution, which is shifting the focus from what's wrong with our people and our communities to what's strong within our communities and how we can build that strength to create a better tomorrow, is happening everywhere. We spent the last 6 years in the UK really focusing in on how we could create demonstration sites across the UK, places that were living evidence of what happens when you take the theory and you put it into practice. I'm proud to say that in May, we're going to be working with our partners, the Bank of Ideas, to do the exact same thing across Australia. And there are many other countries where we're seeing this backyard revolution come into reality. Just a few weeks ago, I was very privileged to spend some time in Rwanda. I started my journey in Rwanda 3.5 years ago, training community builders in the Gasabo district of Kigali, which is the capital of Rwanda. And they have been working over the last 3.5 years with 49 schools and 484 villages in Kigali. I'd love to share every single one of the stories because each of them touches a human emotion within us in a very, very special way, but I don't have time. So let me just share one. This is a school where the community builder came alongside parents, people without any credentials, people who had huge self-doubt in their power to change anything. But the community builder invited them to identify what they cared about enough to act upon, and then invited them to take action on those issues. And they identified 2 things that they felt really needed to change if their school and their village was to realize its potential. The 2 issues that they took on, the first was the fact that there were street children, each of their villages, that were not connected to community, not connected to family, and not connected to school. They didn't gang press these kids into school. What they did was they came alongside them and they formed relationships with them. And they found out from them what it would take for them to reconnect back into community life and back into school. And the kids said very clearly, we do not want to go to school and learn books. School is boring. Hands up who thought school was boring. I certainly did. They did not want to go to school. What they wanted to learn was how they could connect with people who were interesting, people who knew how to make tables, people who knew how to fix engines. They wanted to connect with people who didn't have any formal teacher training, but who could teach them the skills that would allow them to have a life they wanted. Today, they're in school, but it's not like any school that most of us have gone to. They're in a school that looks as much like an economic hub as it does a school. It's a school that is focused not just on educating people, but also giving people the skills they need for life. The other challenge they had was supporting teachers who lived on meager salaries to be able to live with dignity and pride and have a morale in teaching their children. What did they do? They sourced local produce and they created a supermarket in the school so that teachers can use their salary to buy the food they need at reduced prices. These are ordinary people, uncredentialed people doing extraordinary things. And we see this every single day when we start with a focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. Imagine what the world would look like if we were able to take those stories and to proliferate them, and to look at the significance of the stories and see that the 2 things that mattered most was the grassroots action of citizens but also the help of community builders. In each story, there was a community builder who was supporting the village and the individuals to identify what was strong within them and figuring out how to use what was strong to address what was wrong and make what was strong even stronger still. Imagine the world if everybody who was defined as the problem secured the power to redefine the problem. Imagine how more inclusive, how more beautiful a world we'd have, how more fruitful a world we'd have. You know, I believe that the solution to the most intractable problems that we face starts from the grassroots, from inside out. And it starts with a belief of the fact that there is no two-tiered society where one group of people with all of the problems are rescued by another group with all of the solutions. There is no them and us. There is only us. Lilla Watson, the great Aboriginal elder, educator, and activist, once said, "If you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." So as we look to a brighter tomorrow, and as I conclude, let's recognize the fact that we are the people we've been waiting for. We are sufficient onto the challenge, and we are becoming the change we seek. Thank you.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Oh, I can't. Okay, good. Good.
We can't see you though.
Oh, yeah, I shut off my camera. There we go. Any thoughts on that, or can anybody see why, for me, that very much so relates to peer support and what we do?
Strengths.
We were talking here, I'm still in the room with Sherry, and we were saying that it's the difference between saying, hi, I'm an addict, and hi, I'm a person living in long-term recovery. You know, that taking that powerful, positive outlook in life and then sharing it as a strong peer versus, you know, the shame that might come with the old words that are really stigma-inducing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're still listening, but I'm assuming, I know Jonda did. I'm assuming Ashley did. There's some members that have gone through Mary to the peer recovery coach training in Minnesota. And one of the books you received was What's Right With You. And this, to me, kind of captured a lot of the essence of that book of, moving away from the diagnosis and really when we approach somebody as a peer, looking at, you know, what strengths are you bringing to the table? And everybody brings a strength to the table, and helping that person use those strengths to build a life in recovery that's meaningful to them. One of the pieces that I love about that little clip is the idea that when someone owns something and they've built it themselves, their level of passion and investment in that plan can't be matched. So it's when they're given a plan, they might follow that plan, but I think the long-term sustainability around that plan is not as great as when somebody creates a plan themselves based on their strengths and their thoughts and their capabilities.
I agree. And also, so I had worked at a detox prior to taking the RCA training and working for MRC. And, you know, people would come in that had reused, and I'd always ask them, you know, like, well, what went wrong? Like, what happened? You know, and they shamefully would, you know, say their story. So now when I meet with participants, they'll say, yeah, I was sober for 3 years. And I kind of go into like, wow, that's impressive. Like, what were you doing right? You know what I mean? And you can do that again, and that seems to make the conversation go in a much happier and uplifting place.
Thank you for that, Ashley. That is really important. I think with substance use disorders in particular, there's kind of this school of thought that, like the clock resets if you have a reoccurrence or reuse. The clock resets, and all that time and all those skills and everything you built up goes away. And again, I think that's where peer support can be really vital in our larger system too, in saying that time did not go away. You still built those skills. You still have everything you learned there is still accessible. There is no resetting of a clock. I mean, that's all just kind of a school of thought that's imposed on us. And so that a reuse can, we can help guide people back to the path that they want to be on, and kind of take the judgment away from that reuse or that reoccurrence, and remind them that the time they were in recovery was really, really valuable, and that didn't go away. So I'm glad you brought that up, Ashley. Thank you. Any other thoughts on the video or around that kind of building on people's strengths? All right, well, I'll just jump into some announcements. Really what I have, like I said, I think it's our next session. I have to look up the date, will be February 13th. And we have Laura Saunders joining us, and she's a MINT trainer, so she'll be doing some motivational interviewing, skill building, really specific to peer support. So that'll be a fun hour to join us on, let's say again, February 13th. Also upcoming in Minnesota, we're doing the Recovery Coaching, a Harm Reduction Pathway training. And so my organization, the organization I'm with, the Great Lakes Addiction Technology Transfer Center, is collaborating with Minnesota Recovery Connection to bring that 3-day training to Minnesota. That's going to be really exciting. I've mentioned it before, but the founders, the individuals bringing that training helped create the Connecticut recovery coach training, so the CCAR training, and so they've been in this field a really long time, and it looks to be a really fun and exciting training. I don't know, let's see, Rebecca, could you, I don't know, did Lucia had sent out a survey?
Yeah, it says a survey she'll send out the evaluation survey. I think that's what she meant.
Oh, perfect.
Right. So if you want a continuing education certificate, the last question on that survey is, yes, I want one, or no, I don't. And so fill that out, and we can send off the certificate to you via email. And let's see, her other notes were to make sure we please invite other people in your circle to join us. A simple email to Lucia or myself, or maybe to Chris, can get you on the list so that you'll get the link twice a month. And then if you've got an issue, a topic, a case that you'd like to ask questions about, or something, whether it was a great success or it was a struggle or opportunity to learn, to bring that forward and let us know that you've got that and that you're willing to share it with the group.
And Lucia can typically send out a template to you. So say you had a case study that you wanted to go through, Lucia can send out a template, and so that you feel like you have kind of a format that you can follow to bring that case study to the group. And typically, I think on the case study days, there's usually time to approach more than one. So you can always spontaneously bring one up as well. I did put the link to the harm reduction training in the chat box next door here. So off to your right, if you open that up. If anybody has questions about the video, you can feel free to email me. And I can just type that in the chat box as well. Any thoughts from people that aren't from Minnesota? Any ideas on what would be helpful for future sessions? I don't know if he's talking or not. All right. Well, I think that is a wrap for us. Like I said, there's the link to the harm reduction training in the chat, as well as my email address. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if you had any questions. Otherwise, thank you all for joining us today. And the next session is February 13th, and we'll have a motivational interviewing trainer on the call with us. All right, I think that's a wrap. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Let it go.